These virtues of magnanimity and magnificence were possessed by the Queen of Heaven in a manner unattainable by others capable of these virtues. Mary alone found no difficulty or hindrance in accomplishing great things, and she alone did everything on a grand scale, even though the matter was small in itself. She alone understood the full bearing of these virtues, as she did of all the rest. She could give them their full perfection, without gauging them by any contrary inclinations, nor was she ignorant of the perfect manner of exercising, nor of making them dependent upon the assistance of other virtues. For this is wont to happen with most holy and prudent men, who, when they cannot attain entire perfection in all virtues, choose that which seems to be the best of them. In all her practice of virtues, this lady was so magnanimous that she always performed that which was most excellent and worthy of honor and commendation. Yet though she deserved honor and praise from all creatures, she was nevertheless most magnanimous in despising it and referring it to God alone, and she preserved her humility while practicing the highest perfection of virtue. The acts of her heroic humility stood, as it were, in heavenly rivalry with the magnanimous excellence of all her other virtues, and were like richest jewels, set in contrast with the beauteous variety of excellences that adorned the daughter of the king, whose glory, as David her father had said, is all from within. Also in magnificence our queen greatly excelled. For although she was poor and without any affection toward earthly things, nevertheless she dispensed most freely those things with which the Lord furnished her, as happened with the precious gifts which the Magi offered to the child Jesus, and many times afterwards in the course of her life, after the Lord had ascended to heaven. As mistress of all creation, she also showed her great magnificence by willingly yielding the whole of it for the common benefit and for the honor and the worship of God. Many she instructed in this doctrine and virtue, which, on account of their vile customs and inclinations, mortals practice with so much difficulty, and in which they never reach the proper perfection of prudence. Commonly mortals follow their inclinations and desires, seeking only the honor and emoluments of virtue, and to be esteemed as great and extraordinary. The honor and glory of virtue is thus diverted from the Lord by their wrongful hankering, and consequently, when any occasion presents itself for the performance of a magnanimous and generous deed, they shrink back and fail to execute it on account of the littleness and meanness of their sentiments. As their desire of seeming great, excellent, and worthy of admiration nevertheless remains, they have recourse to other measures proportionably deceitful and really vicious, such as getting angry, showing arrogance, impatience, haughtiness, dislike, and boastfulness. However, these vices are not a part of magnanimity, but of smallness and meanness of heart. Hence, as such conduct and sentiments repel rather than attract honor, they do not gain the honor and esteem of the wise, but contempt and abhorrence. Instruction vouchsafed by the Queen of Heaven. My daughter, if thou seekest attentively to obtain a full understanding of the excellence and the propriety of the virtue of fortitude, as is my wish, thou shalt come into the possession of a most efficient check for the guiding of thy irascible affections. For these are the passions which are most easily moved to action and are most apt to overstep the bounds of reason. Thou shalt also have the means of attaining to the utmost greatness and perfection of virtue which thou desirest, and of resisting and overcoming all the machinations of thy enemies, who seek to intimidate thee in the pursuit of what is hard in perfection. But understand, my dearest, that the irascible in thy nature assists the concupiscible by opposing what is hostile to the object sought after by the concupiscible powers. On this account, the irascible will deteriorate much faster than the concupiscible as soon as the concupiscible affections become disordered and begin to love what is only apparently good or what is vicious. In place of a virtuous fortitude, many execrable and deformed vices will then result. This will also teach thee that disorderly love of one's own excellence and distinction and vainglory, which are the sources of pride and vanity, will breed many vices peculiar to the irascible passions, such as discords, contentions, quarrels, boasting, strife, impatience, obstinacy. Moreover, also vices peculiar to the concupiscible passions, such as hypocrisy, lying, vain strivings, curiosity, and the desire to appear more than is befitting to a creature, and to conceal the meanness which truly belongs to one who has committed sins. From all these contemptible vices thou shalt keep thyself free, if thou wilt earnestly mortify and restrain the inordinate movements of concupiscence by virtue of temperance, which I will now teach thee. For when thou strivest after that which is just and useful, although thou must make use of fortitude and of all the well-ordered irascible passions, it must always be done in such a way as not to pass the proper bounds, and there is continual danger of allowing oneself to be carried away by inordinate zeal for virtue, when one is subject to self-love or any disorderly love. Sometimes this vice disguises itself and hides under the cloak of a pious zeal, and its victims, anxious to appear zealous for God and the good of their neighbor, are in reality deceived and ensnared into anger by selfish motives. On this account, the patience, which is founded in charity and which is accompanied by generosity and magnanimity, is very honorable, estimable, and necessary, for he that really loves the highest and truest good easily bears the loss of apparent honor and glory, despising it with magnanimity as vile and contemptible. Even when it is freely given by his fellow creatures, the magnanimous will set no value on it. He will show himself invincible and constant in all his undertakings. Thus he will advance, according to his opportunities, in the virtues of perseverance and patience.